Paul J. Brasco. Kathy Ann Harris.
Present.
Randall J. LeBlanc. Councillor Romard. Present. Councillor Vidal.
Present.
3 present, 2 absent, you have a quorum.
Thank you very much. Anyone in the audience be taping or recording this session, this particular meeting? If so, can you please identify yourself?
Chris Campbell,
Chris Campbell.
recording.
Will be recording, videotaping this meeting. Councillor Harris makes a motion to approve minutes from April 2nd. On the motion, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no. The ayes have it, thank you. New matters.
1725, Edition Ash Street.
Okay. Before we get started, to the committee and also people in the audience, when this was first brought to us this past week, it was brought to us by one of our colleagues, a large councillor from Propeller Road, mentioned that perhaps I should be checking in with the State Ethics Commission because of my proximity to the property. I did do my research, I did reach out to the State Ethics Commission, and after presenting the case, they mentioned that there wouldn't be any sort of conflict for me to chair this committee for this particular issue, even though I live about 2 blocks approximately from the property, but there isn't going to be any sort of problem, and I'll be providing the clerk a copy of the letter given to me by the State Ethics Commission, so I want to make sure that's on the record so we're all aware of that. All right, so new matters, 17-25, street opening, 156-158 Ash Street. Councillor Harris, motion to hear from Rough Committee member. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no. I imagine.
Good evening, Brett Francis, Scafidi Giuliano, here on behalf of Dave Chagnon. Again, we were here last week at the public hearing for a street opening over at 156-158 Ash Street in connection with the proposed 3-unit residential structure. One of the issues that came into question was comments from the engineering department that requested a opening in pavement an additional 20 feet, 5 feet on one side, 20 feet on the other side. Petitioners open to that, not a problem, has agreed to do that. The question was whether or not the opening would have to extend fully across Ash Street. So what I did today in preparation was had the Bibbo Brothers Engineering, also over on Hammer Street.
1 second, Attorney Craig, Mr. Chairman, we just want to identify the recording.
Anybody else recording except for Mr. Chris Campbell?
I'm not recording anything.
You are not?
Nope.
Thank you, ma'am.
So
Carry on.
the one question was whether or not it was necessary to pave the full length across Ash Street. Obviously, there's an additional cost for that, and I also understand that there's a waiver process involved as well. So if those are things that we could discuss and maybe get further guidance on that, that'd be great. How the 10 waiver votes works. But again, if it meant putting this thing off, we just as soon go for the full opening and pavement. We'd be happy to do the extra 5 feet and 15 feet all the way across. In addition to that, also, my clients have agreed to do the sidewalk over the property for that full distance as well. I do have extra plans. Per the request of one of the councilors, I did email to the clerk, the assistant clerk, the plan that was filed with the original application, so you all should have an electronic version of that. And if we end up going with another plan other than the one that we filed with this application, we'd be happy to email that one in as well. So with that, if there's any other questions, my client Dave Chagnon is here and happy to answer any questions you have. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Councillor Harris.
Thank you. Through you, Chairman, to the petitioner, I just want to ask a couple of qualifying questions. So based on your opening statement, I just want to make sure you're not opposed to full street paving?
Not at all.
Not at all. So can you clarify for me what sort of exception you're seeking then on this?
Well, the plan shows, the original plan that was filed shows a street opening 48 feet across and the full, and I think it's 25 feet, the full width of Ash Street, so 48 feet by 25. The engineering departments, as well as the public works departments, asked that the opening be extended 5 feet to the right and 15 feet to the left. We're happy to do that. The question is whether or not those additional, because again, we're not near at that point the utilities, the purpose of opening up the street. This is just for the curb opening, and it would only affect the curb openings. So I've requested and received curb openings just for a foot, just to do the opening where utilities were not involved. So in order to cut costs and significant costs as well, we would request that for the additional amount requested by the engineering department, which we're happy to do, that we only need to open and repave 1 foot width, rather than the full 25 feet across Ash Street. Because what it does is it actually takes it from 48 feet to 68 feet, almost a third. I mean, my math's not 100% there, but almost a 30% increase of pavement, 5 inches thick, 68 feet across. Again, if we can get our authority to do so, we're happy to do it. But if it was something that we could handle tonight and the waiver could be done, then we prefer to only have to pave and open the full 48 feet, and then for those additional 20 feet, only 1 foot.
And so when you say 1 foot so back to what you're willing to pave, let's clearly state what you're willing to pave is the whole thing, should we choose that that's the direction that we need to go. But you're asking for some sort of exception, or at least due to incurred costs, you'd like to understand for the 48 feet across of the width of what you're opening, you're saying you'll pave curb to curb.
Curb to curb.
Okay, it's a little confusing how you're presenting the
I
information.
understand. That's why I do actually have a plan
Okay.
that, again.
Let's make sure all committee
Just make sure
members.
put it up there.
Yeah.
Yeah, make sure all
I'm
committee
happy, I
members.
have a couple extra copies.
It's different than what we have here.
It is.
Okay.
Can I
Yeah, that's
say
what-
something, guys? The 1 foot is only to replace the curb cut, to replace that curb.
As part of this project, we're modifying the curb
And
cut.
the parking is on the left-hand side of the road, we're on the right-hand side of the road. So they gotta cut the 1 foot to replace the curbs on the street.
So let's go to plan and let's walk every committee member
You
through
got it.
that. to plan.
So here's your 48 feet across with the width of the property, 25 feet across Ash Street. Here, they extend the opening, the additional 15 feet, and only down 1 foot. And this one's 5 feet, only 1 foot. So if you look, this plan does not go the full 68 feet all the way down. It does 48 feet by 25 feet in this area, 15 feet this way by 1 foot, 5 feet this way by 1 foot. This plan has been stamped and dated by the engineer, so it's an official plan.
Just to clarify what you're stating for those in the room recording and who may be
Please.
watching this eventually. So this additional foot on each side of the plan, if we could circulate this while you're talking, I'd like to restate what I'm hearing. The 1 foot exception that you're asking to only come out 1 foot is so that you can embed the new curb into the street.
Exactly.
That's purpose and intent of this.
Yeah.
And it's the
so-
non-parking side. So, and then again, in the alternative, I have the other revised plan that shows the full 68 feet.
Can we circulate that so everybody sees
You
that
bet.
as
In
well?
fact, Gary, if you want to open this up, pass out a couple of these ones.
Oh, you get copies?
Yeah, I got a couple of these.
I apologize.
No. And
That
then
plan
these
shows-
plans, these revised plans also, let's clearly state where we are with this. These revised plans are not submitted electronically because you're seeking direction from this committee so that then you can submit the final plan electronically. Is that also true?
100%.
Thank you.
Fred, you might want to explain the reasoning why it was done this way. It's usually 5 feet beyond the utilities, that's why it ended up at 48 feet. And that's usually what's required, 5 feet beyond each utility each side, that's why it got to the 48 feet. Did you want one?
I'm good, thank you.
Okay, so let's
I'll take
step back through that if you don't mind.
You bet.
Determine how you came up with 48 feet, and then where you're also coming up with the overall width of the project and where you're seeking exception.
Sure, 48 feet first, the plan was designed, I had no input on the plan. As a lawyer, you're kind of given, here's what the parties, the engineer and the petitioner have agreed to do. And as the attorney, you file an application and see to it. So I wasn't there on the planning stage, but the 48 feet in general covers, as the petitioner stated, the utilities that are gonna be dug, that are the reason we need access to the street, and then 5 feet on each side of those as a buffer. So I guess, you're not going, only opening up right by one of your two utility lines. So that's how you got the original 48 feet.
Okay, that's clear to me. So again, just to clearly restate, you have no issue with paving the entire width, should that be the desire of this committee. However, you just wanted to clearly state why you wanted to possibly explore 48 feet as the actual width of curb-to-curb paving, and only allow 1 foot into the street where you're burying a brand-new curb that you're cutting for the purposes of this development.
That's absolutely correct.
Is that correct?
That's 100% correct.
Okay. All right, I'm clear on the curb cuts and the paving. Other counselors may have other questions. I'm gonna move on to additional questions. Just so that we understand kind of your timeline on this project. So last we spoke, you had a demo permit in hand. Is that still the case? When does demolition start on this property?
I spoke with the excavator today, he's scheduling it, so probably within 2 weeks.
And last when you were before the broader committee, we had asked about communication and notification to the neighbors. I know you may know some of the other building owners, but there are renters in that area. I've gone around that area, they're almost all renter properties and some condos in that area. Is the plan still to communicate well ahead of this demolition? And could you please go through the hours of operation that you'll be
They've all been notified already.
involved in?
All that's part of the permanent process with the
You
city.
gotta notify it all.
Registered mail, registered mail.
Hours of operation.
Hours of operation, please, that you plan to run this
I
out?
would say, guys start at 7,
To 4:30.
maybe 5, I mean, there could be people there 6, 7 o'clock at night at times, but normal hours would be, 7 to 5. But I don't know what the ordinance in Waltham is for cutoff time, but it would certainly be within the rules for working hours. There wouldn't be people there at midnight or nothing. I think, I don't know if Waltham is 7 or 8 o'clock at night, it's the time you're supposed to cut off on job sites, I'm not sure what
I
that is.
think it's earlier than that.
I think it's earlier than 8.
5.
7 to 7.
I don't think so.
Nonetheless, we'll comply.
Yeah.
Whatever the rules are, I mean, usually the police will let you know if there's a problem, but they know the rules, I don't really know. We've never had an issue.
And then because that's a one-way street, I just want to recast what your plan is for moving debris out of that site where you'll be parking. What is your plan for the demolition? How do you be parking and traversing that street during the demolition phase?
We'll be putting dumpsters on the property, filling them with the rip down and taking them away. Like any rip down, it's not gonna be easy. It's gonna be difficult, I'm sure.
So commercial traffic on that street during this time will be for dumpster removal?
Dumpster removal, yeah, and bringing in excavators and backhoes and bobcats.
So where will that equipment be stored during?
On the property.
And you have room there with the building in place to be able to store that
There's
kind
a
of equipment?
big backyard, yeah.
And a approximately how many construction folks and things like that have you accounted for the off-street, on-street parking? Because it's really tight in that area. Have you accounted for impacts for parking, like where the employees that will be doing this work will park? Do street parking, is that what your plan is?
Pretty much, I mean, you know, if you can get into, we have driveways both sides of the house now.
Okay.
If you can get on site, they will. If not, they'll have to take whatever legal street parking there is.
On-street opens up after
You know,
8 o'clock.
when everybody goes to work, and there's a lot of spots usually.
Will there be any, are you requiring to park in the neighborhoods at all on-street overnight?
I don't believe
No,
people,
nobody-
people go home and,
Okay.
you know, and usually, the big trucks with trailers and stuff, if they do have a spot, they take it away, they don't leave it overnight.
With a timeline for demolition in 2 weeks, what is your overall timeline for this project where you would need to get approval for plan and such? So when do you plan to complete demolition? Can you kind of paint a picture of your timeline?
If everything goes well, would be ripped down by the end of the month. And permanent process is usually within 30 days with the city. So we'd be actually breaking ground, you know, that would probably be June, and then we're actually getting the foundation going.
And so that's breaking ground. When would you need to get into the street in order to keep your project moving?
The excavator would work that out with the city. Sometimes what they'll do is if they might want us to go right in, get the utilities onto the property, do temporary street patches, and then when all the demolition's done, basically, they come in and do a beautiful street patch. Or they may recommend that we wait it out and do it before November, which is the cutoff time, and just disrupt the whole street once, get your utilities in. You know, they'll probably, the day they put them in, there'll probably be 2 or 3 days of street patches, then they rip all that up and they do the final procedure.
So you went to my very next question. So should the street be allowed to be open? Obviously, this committee needs to deliberate that. Should the street be allowed to be open? What is your plan to create a safe driving surface and such for?
They always leave a safe driving surface, the excavators when they leave.
So what is the
The
plan?
police
Are you
will be
paving-
involved in
Are you
details.
paving or laying plates down, or do you have a plan for that?
In all likelihood, it would probably be opened and closed and paved over with either a temp, or if they did plate it, you know, it would be done professionally, and like I said, usually there's police details involved where, you know, for traffic issues.
In this tear down, are there any hazardous materials or anything in the property? that
No, the
will-
whole place has been cleaned,
So
asbestos.
I've got all it's all part of the permanent process that was, you know, it's had the abatement stuff all filed with the Commonwealth and filed with the city.
And with this timeline of 2 weeks for demolition, have you already terminated water and sewer and all of that to the property
Months
as
ago,
well? And no
yeah.
one is living in the property?
I mean, we're gonna go through it, hopefully there's no squatters in there or anything, but, believe it or not.
We'll check
we-
before they rip it down.
We've
yeah.
found them in places before, but, yeah, the utilities were cut months ago, that's all part of the long process of ripping property down. Usually, the hardest one's the gas company. Water and sewers usually just coordinate with the city, you cut on the property, and then, gets taken up down the road when you make your actual connections at the street.
So all utilities have been terminated?
On-
You're beginning, on-prem?
On
you're-
property.
And you're beginning the game plan, if you will, for your 2 week tear down, bringing on those dumpsters, parking your commercial vehicles, and beginning the process of construction before you start.
The next step, yeah.
When you communicated to the abutters, I just want to make sure for the record in committee, did you receive even since then any feedback at all on the construction, any questions from any neighbors, any inquiries relative to the project? Have you received anything from any of those renters or condo owners in that area?
2 of the owners, the guy to the right, talked to me about the construction, guy out back, talked us into taking down a huge tree of his, which was dead, and as a gesture, we took it down to save him the expense, made him and two of the neighbors out back, direct abutters, made them both very happy.
And that's on the back side of the property?
Yeah, they'd be on the street before Ash, but they're a
Myrtle Street.
direct abutters to us.
Yep.
Nice people. It's like you said, it's all rental, they don't live in either one of them.
Yep. Any other feedback or accommodations that you've been asked for?
Everybody's been nice, you know. We've been there quite a few days and haven't had any negative problems, you know.
Thank you very much. No further questions.
Thank you, Councillor Harris. Councillor Romard.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so it's clear to me, quite honestly, what you're asking to do. My concern here, we talked a little bit about, or the big issue here is, you know, the opening of the street after it's been paved, right? And do we have the date of when this was last paved?
2015, I don't have any better than that, for 3 years.
Which is why you're here, kind of thing. And the issue that I think we discussed just briefly last week was that you were unaware of the 5-year moratorium. In all of your discussions with the building department, it didn't come up, you weren't aware of the need to do this, and once you found out, then you made plans to see.
Engineering brought it to my attention when I submitted the plans.
Okay.
They let us know.
And, Mr. Chairman, I know we say this every time, but certainly just for the record, I think we here in the council, you know, put in that 5-year moratorium. I think everyone can understand it. It makes sense if the city pays to have a street paved and all that. We shouldn't be ripping it up. However, having said that, the city has just been slow in getting that word out. We've spoken with the building department and other departments to make sure that when people come in, that's one of the first things we notice, or they are told, but again, the city's been just slow with that. So having said that, you know, until we can gain comfort that the city's doing their part and can document that and we get proof, then I think we're at a loss in that sense. So on the plan that I have, and it is not the most recent, I did give it to the engineer, but what are these galleys in the, it says proposed 3-unit building, in the front and the back? What are they?
Councilor
Those are on-site,
Councilor Rowland.
Oh, thank you.
on-site underground tanks for, you can't have any water runoff off of properties anymore. So one of them would take care of the driveway, and I'm taking the front one.
Are you putting those in, or they're there already?
No, we were putting it.
The excavator puts them in. It's all
Okay.
part of the, you can't build without.
Yeah,
Without-
okay.
Taken
care of. That's what those are called, galleys. Okay. And I'm sorry, sir, can you identify yourself for the committee?
I'm Tim Galvin, Dave's
Yeah,
partner.
business.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay. So those are drainage
Yes.
Yeah.
systems. And it's okay to, if I look at this third side, we're gonna have parking spaces, it's okay to park above those?
Oh,
or on
absolutely.
top of those, not an issue, okay. We mentioned last week the shortening of the existing opening and the impact that might have on the abutters. Were you able to speak to them? They,
Yeah, we know the about it, yeah, it's not a problem, because it's a one-way street, would have nothing to do with coming in or going out.
no, but the issue was the existing opening is now gonna be shorter, right? So when they come down Ash Street, right, so they come down Ash Street, there's a wide turn here that they can make because there's a large opening. Now it's gonna be shorter, it's gonna be
Yeah,
much
but you're
smaller.
coming in the other direction.
This is the one way this way?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Either way,
Yeah.
it's a much smaller turn. Are they aware of it?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, Danny,
Yeah,
Danny
Danny
knows it.
Leblanc,
I've
yeah.
spoken to Dan about it.
Yeah.
He's,
That's the person on this side?
yeah,
yeah.
it's a rental he owns, yeah.
You're sure they're okay with it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right,
Yeah.
okay, okay.
He happens to be a good friend of mine besides this,
Yeah.
And I know we're not too, here we're mostly concerned with the opening of the street here, not so much with the construction, but you said you would work out the time and date of that all with CPW.
Yeah, we usually, we're
Run
not
through
involved,
that.
the excavator, it's quite an involved
Yeah.
setup, and they always work it out with the
Okay.
city.
Yeah, that's all I had, Mr. Chairman, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I just had one question also. Actually, since I have Mr. Kazaza here, just regarding this and the perk test and the water table on this particular property. I know that we had a problem with the property that burned down across the street a few years ago, and I know I reached out to you about when these galleys and these, pits were done for water. I imagine this property has embedded. It comes to that, so they run all the, they dig up the hole, all the water and the perking test and all that stuff's been done, correct?
Yes, Councilor, if I may, the perk test and the deep hole test, which determines the height of groundwater, are on the plans. They're not on this plan, but we would not forward them without that information, because that's so important to making sure that these galleys are gonna function and not overflow.
Correct. All right, great. Thank you, that was my only
The
question.
place actually turned great.
Okay, that's one thing I know
Yeah,
that
it was all
properties
sandy
across the
gravel.
street
The
were
water
having.
just went right down full, so.
Thank you, thank you. Anybody else have any questions?
Yeah,
Yes,
sorry,
sir.
Mr. Chairman, once again.
Romard.
In terms of the repaving, okay, over the street, so, we understand you're, requesting that waiver for the 1 foot, but if we didn't do that, right, we, said do the whole piece, would you be cutting up the street and paving, taking out what's there and replacing new tar and
The guy-
asphalt, or is it just paving over the street? How is that?
No, you
The-
cut it out and
the-
it's gotta be 5 inches.
The one that burnt down, you guys all know about the one that burnt down. Somebody did one next to it,
Right.
I think it was Latado. They grinded it down and then repaved over the surface, so.
I think it's 5 inches to,
You need to go down.
I think,
That's what I understand.
but where the utilities are, that'll be done separate. Usually what it is, the end utility, I believe it's 5 feet after the end utility. That's where Ralph Bibble come up with the 48 feet.
Yeah, yeah,
And then engineering made a recommendation that they understood that we were within the requirement there, but when they seen the curb, seeing that we're going from 2 driveways to 1 driveway, so we're actually filling in a curb of
Yeah.
15 feet, and then we're taking 5 feet on the other end filling in. So they recommended, well, rather than do a small cut and repatch it, why don't we just expand that by 20 feet instead of 48 feet,
Yeah,
68
Which
feet?
is kinda crazy.
Which is, it's a lot of work, it's a lot of expense.
I understand,
But
yeah,
if
but
it's-
that would
if it's
be
something
the
that's
point.
gonna- If
Yeah.
it's something that's gonna be an issue, we're willing to do it because
We don't wanna make it an issue.
it's exactly,
Yeah.
you do what you gotta do in life, that's.
Yeah.
what
And
it
the
comes
same thing
down
with
to,
this
you know.
1 foot, that would be, you'd just be digging down the 5 inches or whatever it is that you need to do. Well, I guess maybe more if you need to
Well,
put in the
dig
curb.
down for
for the curb.
but it would be done, perfect, just
Yes.
like the street patch.
Yeah,
Like I said, it's mainly just an expense.
yes, okay.
But, we
Good,
understand.
Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilor Romard, second time around, Councilor Harris, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, through you to the petitioner. I just want to clarify with you again, you're not opposed to going the entire length of the street after the curb cuts go to 60-something feet and pave curb to curb.
No, I mean, we,
That's the wish of the board, and no, we're not
It's-
opposed.
definitely.
And I will just echo, I think with the moratoriums and why they were put in place, it is to ensure street integrity. You drive around the south side and you don't have to drive far before you hit your first pothole. You don't have to also drive very far before you hit your first renovation
Yeah.
or tear down or other things. And so in order for, progress to be made, we really need to be able to stabilize some of these streets. And the street was paved a mere 2015. And it's
July
already got-
2015.
And it's already got 6 openings on it.
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah,
and,
that's-
you are improving the neighborhood by bringing what is here, but I think also street improvements need to be part of that, since we're not making many concessions for the other neighbors, and there's not a lot of complaints for that. I mean, looking at a 60-foot wide paving process for this to make the street beautiful in front of this beautiful property, I just
Yeah.
want to make sure you're not opposed to it.
Definitely not.
I'd like to make a motion.
Mhm.
I'd like to, motion to approve this with a 60-foot
Okay.
proposal plan.
68.
68, excuse me, 68.
What kind of truck?
Proposal plan, no, exactly, gotta cover the street.
Any sort of conditions, are we gonna go full fill, or we do an infrared
I think we
seams?
should go with all of our standard,
All our standard
with all of our
conditions, okay.
standard
What's the standard condition?
it is infrared seams, and I don't know all the details.
Right.
It's,
Yeah,
you can find
CPW
it.
have those, but it's full,
Whatever engineering, I think
Flowable
the
fill
flowable
and-
fill's the new
Yeah,
way to go,
exactly.
and
That's what
the
they're
street
doing.
opening, so you don't have sagging.
yes, yeah.
And,
And I think on the motion,
Yes.
Mr. Chairman,
Mhm.
I could go basically either way with this, but I gotta believe, Counselor, that the integrity of the the original paving, I'm gonna guess, is stronger than the integrity of this patch. As we know, if you see other patches, there's always the potential for air bubbles, sagging, even though they do their best with the seams and flowable fill, there is that potential. So I'm not sure whether I don't know enough to make the determination that, is it better for just that 12-inch little cut for that 5 feet? Or is it, do we take out the original paving just and put it in with and fill that open patch with new stuff? So maybe through you, Mr. Chairman, to the engineer. Mr. Casaza, do you have any opinion on that in terms of, from the integrity of the street? Does it make sense to keep the original paving and the strength of that versus, cutting it in, digging down the 5 inches and repaving the whole piece? Does it make sense, I guess, to take out, almost 2 feet of good, solid paving that's already there and replace it with new paving, where there's risk of, as I say, bumps, lumps, air bubbles that I don't think they can predict?
Well, I think what any pavement is worth is what's underneath it. It's the base, it's your compaction, it's your preparation for the pavement. It's only as good as what's underneath it. So, the other thing you're mindful of when paving new streets is the seams, is the joints. And if you have a longitudinal joint where there's a wheel rut or potentially someone parking, that type of thing puts pressure on that joint. So I think what I'm seeing here is a full depth patch. And the key to that patch being blended with the rest of the street that was recently paved in 15 is to have a good solid base. And the reason for that controlled density fill is that doesn't settle. It doesn't allow for those voids and bubbles. And I think any good paving contractor, and there are many in the city of Waltham, and our inspectors are out watching those bases go in, because anybody can run a paver over it. But if you have a mushy, or for lack of a better term, unstable base, it's gonna settle as you described. So my 2 cents is, without being too technical, is the least amount of joints, the best compactive effort is what you're looking for when you restore a road.
So having said that, though, I agree, right? So does it make sense to have that joint or that patch 1 foot from the curb rather than go entire?
So
And it's gonna go the entire way
if I
anyway,
could,
I guess, but-
counsel, and to the petitioner too, the idea with the curb to curb is you don't have that lateral joint a foot out, okay? And
I
that's,
see. Okay.
that's
Yeah.
the
Okay.
thing where the water wants to run, that's the thing where We design our roads to carry the drainage. So I think that's just another opportunity for the road, maybe not in 5 years, but certainly in 10, to start to deform.
Yeah.
And start to decay. So I think what I'm seeing here is an opportunity to make it new again, provided that base is in place.
Okay, all right, and thank you. And I was hoping we could save the petitioner some money or whatever, but based on that recommendation, I would support the money. Thank you. Thank you.
Alright. Any other questions? Anybody else? On the motion, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed say no. The ayes have it.
So actually, email to the clerk
Yes.
tomorrow.
Yes.
This plan showing the full 68 feet across,
Yes.
all attached.
That way there's only 2 jobs.
Exactly. And thank you.
It's a nicer job.
Understood.
Thank you.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Thank you.
Very much.
Thank you, councilors. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you very
Thanks a lot.
much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Clark.
Thank you, Mr. Frank.
All right.
How you doing? No other new matters?
Well, we got, no other new matters. We got Harrington did the consent.
Okay.
Thanks again.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for
Yeah,
this
it'll be-
additional.
Yeah, okay, I think so.
Yeah.
Okay, then, Mr. Chairman, if we could take the matter of Harrington Road off the table.
Thank you very much on the motion to take Harrington Road off the table. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no. The ayes have it.
It's Councillor LeBlanc, I think he wanted to be into this, so, okay.
Okay.
Oh, I said Randall LeBlanc. Because he wasn't able to respond. I can get in touch with him. That's what I said.
Present?
Present.
So, just for
Maybe.
the committee's purposes, I'm passing out two documents. The first one here is the original opinion from the attorney Learned. She's here with us tonight, and Mr. Casaza, we asked them to come in. So please take for the committee a copy of that document. It says master on it, let me know. I think I have mine. And then also today, early today, about 1 or 2 o'clock, we received this next piece, and that's called option B.
Yep.
So I'm passing those down as well. If folks can, maybe take a look at that. Just for your new counselors, and to keep this very, very brief, this has been a long process with Harrington Road. We're talking about a 500, roughly approximately a 500-foot public way street that runs from Forest Street, 500 feet, to Cliff Road, and then continues for a very long time and wraps back around Forest Street, all public. So we're talking just about this 500 feet. Based on some history on that, the road has been in great need of repair, paving, sidewalks need repair, and curbing for years and years. Finally, about 4 years ago, after a long wait of 6 years, the city opted to allocate Chapter 90 money for the paving. But they ignored the fact that their sidewalks and curbing needed to be done. Now, as we all know, we've just heard, when you pave a street, it doesn't make sense to rip it up later to do sidewalks and curbing. So I, as the ward counselor, and many of the butters requested the city to do sidewalks and curbing at the same time as the paving. It only makes sense. In doing that, there was missing paperwork around the installation of the sidewalks for many years. To be honest, I don't totally understand it, but according to the city and the mayor, they felt that the city never either assigned or owned or signed off on, or couldn't find paperwork for the installation of the sidewalks. Therefore, they didn't exist, and therefore, by putting in this sidewalk repair, we were up against a betterment. that these abutters were gaining betterments because they never had sidewalks even though they were there. And so we had to go through I'm gonna call it intense, because for the abutters, it was an intense process of a petition, we have a public hearing, so on and so forth. We did the process, what we were supposed to do. Based on that, and after a long period of deliberation within this committee about the benefits of it, the pitfalls, the risks to the city, the fairness to abutters, what we've done in other areas of the city, this committee last, I think it was October, November, decided, based on guidance from the law department and chapter, I think it's 80 and 83 of the Mass General Laws, and our own city ordinances 17-41 to 45, that we as a body had the scope within our authority to set a rate that we felt was fair for these abutters. We did that, as I said, after a long deliberation, and came up with a 10% charge for the abutters. The big piece with that was I won't say many, but several folks on the committee felt, including myself, that no cost should be borne at all, given the precedents that the city has set with Warwick Ave, Gilman, Maine, Moody, Summer, Lake, it goes on and on and on. Lexington, where new sidewalks went in, new curbing went in, and no one was charged. However, in order to comply with those laws that I just stated, and guidance from the law department, we have to charge something. So to keep it simple, to keep it right, to keep it moving, this committee voted on a 10% overall cost for the 7 abutters. That cost came down from CPW to be $69,470 as noted in the paperwork. Therefore, we went to the city engineer for instructions, or according to the process, where he had to create an order and the draft betterments based on the 10% charge. At the same time, we reached out to the law department, even though at the time the chairman of this committee was a municipal attorney, felt that he was, that we had done the right thing, that we were in the scope of our authority, and that, based on the guidance that we were given from the law department, we could do what we did. Just to be sure, we went to the law department one last time for an opinion on, are we okay with this 10%? Are we violating anything? Are we within the scope? We did that, and Attorney Learned, in her professional capacity, as a city attorney, provided that information on in the packet on March 15th. That we had the proper capacity and authority to do the 10%. However, in her capacity as a city attorney, and in looking out for the city, she opined on the fact that, like anything, a 10% charge could raise some issues if in fact it were to ever go to court. And therefore she felt, in her opinion, a 50% rate or 50% charge would be better for the city. And that's what her opinion states here. Based on that opinion, the city engineer created the betterment, the draft, it's a draft betterment, is that what it is? The draft betterment on the 50% rather than the 10. And so the reason to have them come in tonight was to talk about that. Why would we go with the 50%, given that this committee requested and asked for the 10%, and we would expect that that would be honored. Today, at about 1:30, that 10%, I think it's called the order, and the draft betterments was provided with the numbers available to the abutters and what they would be charged. So, we are, based on that total of the 69,740, 10% comes out to 6,975. It's all allocated based on frontage, the way it should be, it's all in order, and so that was provided today. Given that, I will just ask, first, through you, Mr. Chairman, to Attorney Learned, and then to the engineer, if in fact I had summarized that correctly, and just give you the opportunity to say anything on this that you might need to.
All right, Councillor Romard makes motion to hear from our committee member. Attorney Lerner, please.
Hi, so this afternoon I provided you with what is titled Option B. I did email it all to you as well. Foreseeing that the Public Works Committee may have wanted the 10% to be imposed, I gave you a copy of the draft Federal Order calculating the assessments with the 10% figure. I had previously given this committee, through the engineering department, what we call Option A, which again is attached to the email that I gave you this afternoon, that is calculated on the 50% formula, which, when looking at the particular circumstances of this roadway, it would be easier for me, as representing the city of Waltham, to be able to defend that assessment were it challenged in court, or were someone to challenge this through the abatement process. I remind the committee that not everybody on this, and I think it's closer to 900 and something feet, not all of the abutters signed the petition. So there is a potential for challenge from one of the abutters via an abatement petition that would ultimately, could end up in court. But I remind the board, sorry, the commission, the council, once it goes back to the council, the full council, it is the council's role to decide the reasonable assessments. And so that is not something that the weighing of, what you have to do is decide what portion of the benefit that these parcels receive is special and particular to those benefited parcels beyond that which the general public receives. So you make your ratio, your percentage ratio based on that. Is it a reasonable amount? And then once that percentage is established, you take the length of the benefited estates, the frontage that would be assessed, and you break that down proportionally using the frontage of each parcel. So the law that exists says that it is the city council's role, it's within your province to decide ultimately the dollar amount of these assessments. I just needed to advise you that in court, first through the abatement process, which does come back to the city council initially, and then through a court challenge, that it would be difficult for me, for the city to it would prove to be difficult, I believe, to defend on a 10% formula.
And respectfully, Councilor, I thank you because there are some new councilors on the committee. I've worked through that with them. It was that kind of guidance from the law department and such that we came up with the 10%. So that has been voted on. It's not that we would vote or look to change that now. I think what we will need, really, Mr. Chairman, is to vote to accept the engineer's draft betterments, the charges, the assessments that will go to the 7 abutters, and the draft order. I think that's what the vote would be on today. That's what we have received, based on our 10% request. I believe that to be true. Mr. Vice President, through you to the Vice President of the Council, that's what we would be voting on, correct? We got this, the 10% request, the numbers and assessments based on the 7 abutters and their frontage have all been calculated by the engineer. This committee would vote to accept those, and we would go out to full council for the approval as we would in any matter.
We'll need to approve this.
Yes.
Here.
Yes, we have to approve what the engineer provided.
You're looking to approve option B, I meant, right?
Yes, I'm looking to approve the committee's request for the 10%.
Okay.
Before we do that, I'll just give Mr. Casaza an opportunity to speak or say anything you wanted to in terms of the 10%, the betterment, the order, whatever.
Thank you, Councilor Romard, and through Mr. Chairman. The plan that we prepared essentially outlines the 7 properties and their frontages. And so that you can all see, coming off of Forest, the 7 properties that we're discussing here tonight.
We all have copies of that on the last page. I just
Yes, two on the corner, 2 at the intersection with Chatham, 2 over here, for a total of 7. And essentially, the only other thing I would say to you, to the committee, excuse me, is that this road is extremely, one of our older layouts, 1897. So we found these records, and finding plans was not necessarily very easy to do. So, relative to your request and to the petitioner's request, I've highlighted the frontages on this plan, and we prepare the orders and the percentages based on the information we're given. The cost of doing the physical work comes from our Public Works Director and his staff to put that sidewalk in and to put that curbing in, and we apply the numbers. And then we go out and survey to see that that goes in correctly. So that's the purpose of this plan, and beyond that, I'd answer any questions you have.
Councillor Leblanc, Randall.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Question through you to Councillor Romard. So the 10% has already been voted on and approved?
Yeah.
So that's not what we're voting on this year?
Voted on and approved by this committee. We need to go out to full council.
Okay. I have a couple of questions, Mr. Casaza, if you learned. I don't believe I was on the committee when this took place, and we have a document here that is, I believe it is, part public, part private way. That's what this road is, correct?
Yes, but the portion that this Public Works Committee was intending to have the sidewalks reconstructed and is the public
Public
portion.
way.
Yeah.
So question, Councilor Romard brought up that there was a couple other streets, Harrington Road or Doty Street, Warwick, that were possibly public ways that had curbs done that were, no betterments were assessed. Do we have any type of way that we assess this? how the process gets done?
You look to the particular area sidewalk that is proposed, and if it has a public purpose, particularly some of the ways that Councillor Romard mentioned are the schools.
Near a school, sure.
That might weigh into a different process that is used. This petition, this was followed by, through the petition, and that's governed specifically by our ordinance, which is the ones referenced in the memo.
17-21.
Yeah.
I mean, 41, 45.
Yeah, and so, I can't speak to anything that may have occurred or didn't
Sure,
occur,
right.
that
Mm.
didn't follow whatever procedure.
Yes.
But I can speak to, in my correspondence, I dropped a footnote. I did consult with the CPW director, and he explained that if they are reconstructing, they usually use asphalt for the sidewalks and also asphalt berms. This particular petition that came in requested cement sidewalks and granite curbing for the full length of the petition for sidewalk improvement. And he advised that that doubles the cost.
Sort of not charged.
Correct. And so because of the doubling of the cost, I believe one of the reasons that an assessment of the 50% that the law department had recommended is that doubling of the cost. So you have to look at the particular area and decide what benefit those 7 properties are receiving above and beyond the general community, the benefit that the general community receives. And so that's the analysis.
Thank you. Yeah, I guess because where I'm going with this is, I mean, the tar curb don't seem to last. First snowstorm, the plow plows them up. But more so on the lines of as we start to tackle the public way, private way, or converting them, this is the first list I've seen, which is a part public, part private way. And I believe there's 71 or 72 streets on this list. Are we setting, sort of when they asked the question of, you know, Harrington, Doty Street that was, had a public betterment, had big public benefit. Are we setting any precedents by voting this particular street, in this instance, 10% or not? Or, you know, down, are we gonna pay for this later? Or not really, because it's case-by-case basis?
Everything you do sets precedents. So the next petition that comes, somebody will say, well, what did you do on Harrington Road? So you will be setting precedent when this is back out before the full council, which has to make the ultimate decision. I think perhaps option A and option B should both go out to the full council. So that, because the full council has to make this determination. But yes, anything you do will set
And
precedent.
I have no idea if 90% of these streets already have granite curbs or not. And is there a different precedence for private ways, public ways, and public-private ways?
Yes, I'm not privy to the list that you're speaking
Okay.
about. I do understand that there is an attempt to, it's my understanding that the council is looking at
Yeah, we're starting to
converting.
gather our data for that.
And that really requires an analysis of each and every street to see if the street is, fits into, if you're gonna convert a private way to a public way, whether there is a public necessity to do so. And so it is a very particular analysis. Does the street go to a school? Does the street go to a hospital? Does, that sort of analysis. If that helps, but yes, where this is not going to a school, perhaps you would be setting a precedent if we chose the 10% figure. But this area is a public road for the exact area that the sidewalks are being requested to be improved. So it's not a situation where we're on a private way. The private way, repairs to a private way are governed by a different section of our ordinances. And right now, that different section has all repairs to the private ways set to be 75% borne by the abutting benefited estates, and the city only bears 25% in the private way context right now.
Excellent, thank you. At the meantime, I yield the floor back.
Thank you. Councillor.
In the essence of time, Mr. Chairman, that I
Yes.
would move approval that the committee accept option B, or I won't even call it option B, that we will approve the draft betterment for our original request of 10%, and that we go out to full council next week.
On the motion, Councillor.
Off-committee member.
Off-committee
Move to
member.
hear from off-committee member, which you
Yes,
just
move to
did.
hear.
Thank you very
I
much,
just did.
Mr.
Thank
Chairman,
you.
appreciate it. So first of all, I'm glad the council at large asked the attorney present for on the question of whether or not this would set a precedent. And the answer is very interesting and very important. The second thing is, all of you have documentation on your committee that I do not have, and particularly a list of streets, which I just heard mentioned that I've never seen. So I would ask that whatever documentation, whatever that is, option A, option B, and the list of streets that you have, all of the information be sent this week to the full city council.
Thank you, Councillor McMiniman. Off-committee member, Councillor Diana Blank.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just as a point of information, and I was out of the room when the at-large councilor spoke about the list of streets. That list of streets that was received by this committee for this committee meeting wasn't directly related to the Ward 1 matter. That list of streets was provided at the request of this committee by the Assistant City Clerk, and it is a list of streets in our city that are currently classified as both private and public. So you have a street, and currently pieces of that street are private and pieces of that street are public. So that information, it was a request of this committee, but it was just for, information purposes. It was provided in response to a different request not related to this matter.
Thank you, Madam Chair. You're correct.
On the comment of the council president,
Yes.
regardless of whatever reason that was provided to this committee, I'm requesting that the rest of the city council have the courtesy of being given that information. And I thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Of course, thank you very much. Clerk will make note that we'll make copies of the list that was provided.
That is the information we said we're not going to do.
Right, just the list.
Yes, because Councillor LeBlanc referred to a list that wasn't really referring to this in particular, that was completely different. He was referring to another list that we received about the combo private public way road list. But also the options that we have received will be given copies to the full council as well. Copies of option A and option B.
And excuse me, one more thing.
Yes.
Were any of those given to your committee, or if not electronically, but if not, could they be given electronically?
Yes, they were given.
And so I'd appreciate the electronic version as well. Thank you.
Of course, thank you very much. So we have a motion on the table, correct, for the approval of option
10%.
B, which is the 10%, correct?
Correct.
On the motion, all in favor say aye,
Aye.
opposed say no? Yes, so we're approving the motion, we're approving the option B, which is 10%, correct? We're not approving this to send to the full council yet, this is just approving it here, are we gonna be?
No, you just approved, send it.
Okay, that's what I was, okay, good, I'm clear with you.
you're sending us to the full council.
So next, we'll discuss this next month. All right, great. And all the documents we gave it to everybody else will go next Monday. Okay, great. We have one more.
He's here, so might as well do it.
Can we touch upon the COU update, the ACO quickly?
Thank you. Yes,
Councilor Waddick, thank you for your patience. We'll be quick.
I'm not the chairman of
Oh, you are
the
the-
franchises committee. Just a member.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, we're gonna make this quick. Here, all committee member, Mr. Casaza, please. Someone has to take this off table, right?
Take a,
Convert- no, the,
create off the table, please.
Administrative consent order.
Yes.
Okay. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no.
I'd like to hear from our committee member.
Thank you. Casaza.
Okay.
Say aye.
thank you, I'll be brief, I'll try to be brief. The city's administrative order with EPA originated from contamination in the city's drains getting into the Charles River back in the early 2000s. The city has been undertaking a IDDE, illicit discharge detection and elimination program for that purpose, to eliminate the bacteria. And I think I might have said it at some point in the correspondence with the committee, the Charles River at one point was swimmable. So the efforts are paying off, and there's canoeists out there and kayakers out there. However, our city has aging infrastructure, and it's being developed constantly in every nook and cranny, as you know. So we're diligent in trying to find any bacteria as a result of that. Secondly, the administrative order requires a filing with EPA on progress to that program. The administrative order is with EPA. The consent decree, which I'll talk to in a second, is with DEP. That's for the sewer system. So without trying to make it confusing, EPA is right on the horizon of a new discharge permit for cities and towns, and especially a community like ours, Waltham, with the Charles River going right through it, to be more diligent with what goes into the storm drains. So the kind of impetus of this whole thing is, when is enough enough? When are we done with this? And that's a fair question. We update them semi-annually. There will be a new permit on the horizon. We're gearing up to do better with our drainage system maintenance and our bacteria removal. Have they said uncle? Will they say uncle? I honestly don't know. I do make the reports. I do proceed with the programs, and I think it's healthy to fix our infrastructure. That said, as Councilor Waddick mentioned about the consent decree for the sewer system, which was overflowing and bubbling and causing health hazards and public safety, and at one point, if you drove down Taunton Pond Road, you would see a fountain in the manholes, and we've come a long way in 9-10 years, and that doesn't happen anymore. We're going up to Lake and Lex, and everybody's anticipating finishing that and getting it paved. And again, that manhole used to bubble because there was too much infiltration and inflow in it. It had clean water in it. When sump pumps blow and leaking pipes get in there, groundwater comes up. So when will that be over? We are in a implementation phase, the second year of a 10-year plan. We're in the second phase. The first phase we passed with flying colors. Basically, they said, keep doing what you're doing. Keep retrofitting the neighborhoods. And I know the administration is very interested in doing an entire neighborhood and doing all the infrastructure such that it's finished and we can move on. So I don't want to take too much of your time, but we do have a milestone for the second 5 years coming up in 2020. And if you want to send me questions or ask me questions tonight, I'll do my best to answer them.
Councillor, ready to hear from our member, Councillor Logan? You were in the resolution, correct?
I brought the resolution, yes, okay, so, first of all, was that, you mentioned the EPA, because the consent orders I have there are DEP. What is it from EPA?
There's an EPA administrative order, Council Logan.
Is that particular to Waltham?
Yes.
Can we get a copy of that?
Yes, I sent it,
What I got is, in my packet, is
Okay.
I got, 3 administrative consent.
Okay, let me see if I have a copy for you. I'll
Well,
be,
if you could, because I just want to move along with the questions.
Yep.
Can you just make a note to send a
Sure.
copy of that to the clerk that he can send to all councilors?
yes, I thought I
Okay.
Yeah, one of them's from the EPA, can you read, can you just make sure that the earliest one's from the EPA?
and it is confusing, it's from 204, Council Logan.
I've got 3 things, and they're all Commonwealth of Massachusetts Executive Office of Environmental Affairs, Department of Environmental Protection, that's DEP. Okay, this we do not have. So maybe I can just pass that down to the clerk, and the clerk can get copies to all councilors? Okay, now that is a federal EPA administrative
Yes.
order,
Yes,
particular to Waltham, that's separate from the MS4 permits that all communities
Correct.
are under.
yes,
Okay, so just looking at the Mass DEP,
yes,
so I've got 3 different ones, but the latest one is 2010.
correct.
And it says this consent order supersedes the 04 IN 004, okay? Which was the one that you've labeled 2005, the one before that was 2003. But this one, that is file number ACO NE 10 IN 001, that was signed by the city on in February of 2010. That is the latest version, and that supersedes all previous versions.
Yes,
Okay, so that's what we're working under now. It says, from the effective date of this consent order, the effective date was 2/22/2010, which is when DEP signed it. The city shall notify the department of all sewer overflows or bypasses on the department-approved form in accordance with 314 CMR 12038. Have there been any sewer overflows or bypasses since February 22, 2010?
Yes.
This is what I'm saying.
yes.
Can we get a list of all of those? The date they occurred, the location, what caused them, and what was done to
Sure.
remediate them?
Yep.
Okay. The city, says the city shall not issue a sewer connection extension permit or an occupancy permit for any project that adds flow. I'm being told the people that are going to the building department for, it's a store, a new store's going in there, there's not a change in use, they're not applying for a building permit. Nothing's changing, it's just a new store's going in where there was a store before. They're being told that they have to get sign off from the engineering department. Is that true, and why would that be?
So, the building permit process generally goes through engineering for a check to see if there is any new flow. And a lot of times there is not a change in use and there is no new flow. So,
But if there's no change in use under zoning, and there is no actual building permit, they're not actually applying for a building permit.
but then we don't even have to look at it.
Okay. Then it mentions the first 5-year plan that ends January 2010, but you mention a 10-year plan ending 2020. First 5-year plan, so this was signed in 2010, so the first 5-year plan ended in 2015? did it?
Correct.
And now we're on the second 5-year plan,
Yes.
which would end in 2020.
Correct.
Okay. Now, as you mentioned, it says, on or before January 2nd of July 1 of each year, the city shall submit its semi-annual report to the department. Okay. When was the most recent semi-annual report?
December 31st, Council.
Can we get a copy of that?
Absolutely.
Okay. So you think that this will be through the second 10-year plan in 2020?
Yes.
3 years from now. So at
Yes.
that point, do we still need to maintain the whole I&I and sewer bank and everything? Or will we have paid our penance? And
So, at that point, we will do an assessment of the projects and their success in removing the II. How the DEP is going to weigh that versus other communities or whatever they're doing, I honestly don't know. I don't know. My interaction with them through my tenure on the ACO is we're doing what we need to do to minimize the overflow of the system. And that our projects, Cedarwood, Lakeview, Warrendale, and so on and so forth, are exactly what they wanted to see the city do. The I&I and the maintenance of the sewer bank has diminished our sewer flow to the FWRA. Our flows are going down. So we've been successful in achieving getting rid of the clean water and paying for it. It hurts when you have to buy into it, but it helps the greater good when the overall cost to the ratepayer goes down. And it's very convoluted the way NWRA calculates it, because they add in costs from Deer Island and everything else. So we may be doing a great job at reducing our flow, but their rates go to us, our assessments go up because of their infrastructure improvements. So suffice to say,
they pass on their
they
role
pass
to
it-
the ratepayers.
they pass it on to the communities to discharge to them. So, I don't know if that
But
answers your
well,
question.
I guess what I'm looking at more though is the consent order with the DEP. Obviously, there were problems with our systems. It was resulting in environmental impact. That's a bad thing. Obviously, we want to correct it. Plus, they're making us correct it. But as part of that, they implemented this I&I, which a lot of people find very onerous, but we understand we have to do what we have to do. That's what they're requiring, so we have to comply. But at some point, hopefully, we'll have fixed our systems, so our systems are no longer negatively impacting the environment. And at that point, I would think that we wouldn't have to do the I&I anymore.
So that's a question for the state. I really can't answer that. I wish I could and say I knew what they will do.
I think it's a question that we have to bring up with the state at some point.
And I agree with that
I mean, I think
approach.
we've been good. We've done everything that they've asked us. We've not only implemented the I&I, but we've spent millions and millions of dollars of regular tax money in doing all kinds of infrastructure improvements. So I think at some point they need to take their,
If I can ask the question if that's the.
well, just one last thing, if we could get a, like an accounting of all the money that was paid into the I&I fund
Sure,
and what it's been spent on and what the balance is.
sure.
Thank you. Thank you,
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, thank you.
Thank you.
Should we do that?
Do we table it?
Yeah, I can't make the motion on that.
Alright, Sam, make a motion.
Motion to table.
All right, Councillor Harris make a motion to table, the administrative consent order update. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All right, opposed say no, you guys have it. Marcus?
Take that vote off the table for 30 seconds, all we need.
All right, Councillor Romard takes a motion over, another road off the table, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no, you guys have it. Go.
I would like if the committee could send an inquiry to whoever, it may be, whether it's engineering, the law department, what's the status of the Nutting Road? It's been in for a couple of months, and we've heard nothing back, so.
I did get something today. The engineering department has raised some questions as to whether or not Nutting Road is a properly recorded private way.
So it took them 3 months to come up with that. Could you get that to me and
Put it back.
put it back on the table? Just get me that information so I know what's going on.
Councilor Harris make a motion to put it back, the Lennon Road resolution back on the table. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. President, working with the committee? Adjourn. Oh,
Sorry.
I'd just like to take the consent decree off the table again real quickly.
okay.
And I'd like to make a request.
Yeah.
For Mr. Zaza for the dollars amount on the I-9s, what's been made in the last, say, 10 years. And then the discharges, the SSOs, the overflows in the last, what, 5 or 10 years? Is it easy enough to do? 5? 10?
10?
All right, 10, and if it could be annually, just so we could see them go down, get a sense of it, all right?
Get a motion, you want to hear the motion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. You guys have it?
How many years for the I-9?
10 and 10. 10 and 10.
And the discharge, the SSOs, annually, by year, just so we can see if they increase. Thank you. Like the place, we should get it back on the table.
Step back to the table, say aye. On the, wish of the committee? Adjourn. Aye. You guys have it? We adjourn. Thank you.